Okay, today we're going to talk about the past continuous. The past continuous, which is also called past progressive, is a verb tense which is used to show that an ongoing past action was happening at a specific moment of interruption or that two ongoing actions were happening at the same time. Read on for detailed descriptions and examples. Now we're going to talk about the forms of the past continuous. The past continuous is formed using a subject, which is going to be I, you, we, they, etc., plus the verb to be in the past, was or were, plus the present participle. Questions are indicated by inverting the subject in was or were. Negatives are made with not, and we're going to see a few examples of that. The positive sentences or statements, we have examples here. I was working, you were working, he was working, it was working, we were working, and they were working. For the negative, like we said, we're going to be adding not, and that's going to be in between was and the verb with the ing ending. I was not working, you were not working, he was not working, it was not working, we were not working, they were not working. Okay, now for the questions, remember we're going to invert the order of the words. So for a question, we're going to start with was I working, were you working, was he working, was it working, were we working, were they working. Now, very important now, when do we use past continuous? We have different cases when we're going to be using this past continuous tense. The first one is we use past continuous to describe an action that was in progress at a specific time in the past. For instance, we have what were they doing at 6 o'clock yesterday? Claudia was playing the guitar, John was eating dinner, and the kids were watching TV. So here the important part is an action that was in progress at a specific time in the past. Okay, so the question here is indicating a specific time, which is at 6 o'clock yesterday. And for that, like we said, we use the past continuous. Okay, the next case when we use the past continuous is we use the past continuous to talk about an action that was in progress when another action interrupted it. For instance, she was reading a book when the alarm clock rang. I was listening to the radio when the electricity went out. Maria was talking to Jeff when we arrived. Okay, so on these examples we have underlined the action that was happening, the ongoing action in the past, and with red we see another action that interrupted the first one. She was reading a book when the alarm clock rang. Okay, so it implies that she stopped reading because the alarm clock rang. Same thing with the second example. I was listening to the radio when the electricity went out. Okay, here underlined we have the ongoing action and then the action that interrupted the first one. And same thing with the last example. Maria was talking to Jeff when we arrived, and it implies that when we arrived, Maria and Jeff stopped talking. The third case is we use past continuous to talk about two actions that were in progress at the same time in the past. That means both actions were simultaneous in the past. And for this, it's important, there are certain words that we can use and that we can recognize So we know that we're talking about this case. He was looking at Rose while she was reading a book. They took many photos while they were visiting New York. Okay, so here the key word is while, which means that these two actions was looking and was reading. These two actions were simultaneous. They were happening at the same time. Now it's important to notice that not necessarily both actions have to be on the past continuous. On the first example, both of them are in the past continuous tense. He was looking at Rose while she was reading a book. But on the next one, that's not the case. The first action is actually on a simple past. Okay, they took many photos while they were visiting New York. Again, on this one, we have simple past, took, and here we have past continuous, and that's okay. It's a good usage of the past continuous in this case. Okay, the next one is number 4. We use the past continuous for activities as a background description. Okay, and what is background? Well, background means the environment. Okay, it's the past continuous can be used to describe a scenario or the environment or background. For instance, it was a dreadful morning. The snow was falling, the wind was blowing, and the cars were skidding on the icy roads. Okay, so we're describing what, and with this sentence we're describing the morning, and we're describing whatever was happening in that morning. For instance, the snow was still falling, the wind was blowing, and the cars were skidding on the icy roads. Okay, so again, we're using past continuous to describe a background. Okay, the background, the environment on that morning. Okay, let's move on to the next one. The past continuous with words such as always or constantly expresses the idea that something irritating or shocking often happened in the past. Okay, and this is usually going to be or is going to have a negative connotation. Okay, for instance, he was always coming to class late. Okay, so we have always and we have always here. He was always coming to class late, and this is something that could be considered irritating. Okay, Albert was constantly bullying everyone in class. Okay, so now we have the other keyword, constantly. Okay, so again, the past continuous with words such as always or constantly expresses the idea that something irritating or shocking often happened in the past. Now it's important to talk about stative verbs. And what are those? Stative verbs describe a state rather than an action. They aren't usually used in the past continuous form. Okay, it's very important to understand that these verbs are different than most verbs, because most verbs describe something that happens, or in this case something that is happening, an action. Okay, but here with stative verbs we're describing something a little bit different. For instance, we're describing thoughts and opinions, or I want to rephrase that. The stative verbs are related or often relate to thoughts and opinions. We have a list of verbs such as agree, believe, doubt, guess, imagine, know, mean, recognize, remember, suspect, think, or understand. Okay, so all those verbs are related to thoughts and opinions. Okay, they're not what we usually would think of as an action. Okay, Another case is for stative verbs. They're related to feelings and emotions: dislike, hate, like, love, prefer, want, or wish. Okay, again, these are not positive actions per se. There are more related to feelings and emotions. Okay, another group of verbs are senses and perceptions, such as appear, be, feel, hear, look, see, seem, smell, taste. Okay, so these verbs are related to senses and perceptions, and again, they're not really actions. Okay, and the last group are verbs that relate to possession and measurement, such as belong, have, measure, own, possess, weight. And we have a couple examples here. Knowing this verb falls within the category of I guess thoughts and opinions. Okay, we have it here. Know. Okay, knowing is related to our thoughts, and we cannot use this verb in the past continuous. We have a wrong example here, that's why it's crossed. We cannot say I wasn't knowing the answer. In this case, we have to use simple past, okay, and that goes for all these verbs on the list that we just read. It's the same principle. We cannot use them on past continuous. The option we have is to use simple past. I didn't know the answer. Okay. Another example that is wrong, or how not to use these verbs: she was really liking you. Okay, we cannot say that. Again, the option we have is to use a simple past. She really liked you. Okay, simple past, that's correct. Okay, and the verb here, the verb is like. Okay, and I guess that could be under feelings and emotions. We have dislike, hate, like, etc. Okay, so again, all these verbs are stative verbs, and they're not referring to an action. They refer more to thoughts and opinions, feelings and emotions, senses and perceptions, possession and measurement. And these verbs, stative verbs, cannot be used on the past continuous tense.